Thanks for coming in. Mr. Baker will be here in just a moment. Mr. Baker, we're just going to wait on Mr. Baker. If you want to have a seat, he'll be joining us. He's just coming down from the classroom, so we're just going to wait for Mr. Baker to come in, and then we'll get started. How are you today?
Good.
Good. All right. So Mr. Baker is here. So, hello. I am Mrs. Morano, and I am Dan's special education teacher. So I'd like to introduce myself as well as everybody else. So I did make up these name tags just in case you forget one of our names and want to address us. So we have
Principal May.
So Principal May.
I am Mr. Baker.
And you are the
teacher.
The
yes.
teacher, okay? And
Miss Shaw.
Miss Shaw, all right. So we're going to get started here today. So the purpose of today's IEP meeting is to go over Dan's yearly progress as a fourth grader. The last time we visited with you was last year at this time when he was a third grader, and we were setting goals for him. So we're going to talk about assessments, his strengths, his weaknesses, concerns that maybe any of us have seen, any concerns that you've had, and then we will discuss the new terms for this year, the new guidelines, if you will. All right? So before we even get started, I just want to know, is there any time restraints? Do you need to leave at any time? Or are you good to just go through the meeting with what we need to do?
I'm just good to go.
You're good? Does anybody else have any time constraints here?
I have a class period in 30 minutes.
30 minutes, all right. Is it okay if we do not finish in that 30 minutes that we pick up at a later date? Can we agree to that today?
Yes.
Yes? Okay?
Yes.
All righty. So also Mrs. Munson will be changing and taking notes. We do have our documents here, but if in the case that we need to change things, Ms. Munson will be typing some stuff up for us today. All right. So first of all, I need to give you your parents' rights. You are in control of Dan's education. This gives you all of the guidelines for special education, the procedurals, elements, and the safeguards for you as a parent. I would recommend reading this at your leisure. I'm not going to make you do that today, but I do want you to keep this in your file. So at any time, if you have a question or you think that maybe there's an issue with Dan's IEP, you can always look in here, or you can always contact one of us as well. So, perfect. So I'm just going to give everybody a copy here. All right. So we will be going over goals, strengths, and weaknesses today, and this is just our yearly meeting. And so this shouldn't take us too long here today. And if you have any questions at any time, please stop me and ask us. You can ask any of us. We want you to feel comfortable with the choices that we're making for your son in school. So we do have some IEP ground rules that we're going to set here. It's important that we communicate effectively and that we listen carefully, that we respect everyone's views. I want you to share your views willingly if you do not like some of the new objectives that we have set for Dan, that you speak your mind. Also, we want you to ask us questions. Be open-minded and look at the views, and then let's try and honor our time limits and really stay on track today, okay? So let's go ahead and get a look at this. First of all, I want you to take a look at this information here. It's your address and your phone number. Are those still current?
No. We have transferred to an apartment.
Okay, so you've transferred to an apartment. So, Miss Munson, why don't we get that address? Is it 209? And what street is that on again?
10th.
10th, okay, 209 10th Street. Perfect, so you're closer to the school, which that'll be nice for commuting in the morning, huh? Awesome, all right, so I think we go ahead and we get started here. So, we talk a lot, me and Mr. Baker. We work very closely as our rooms are next to each other, so I've had a chance to chat with him, but what do you think Dan's strengths are at home? Like, what do you really think Dan excels at?
Well, I think at home he really excels on just being around his sister and helping with chores and helping out while he can.
Okay, so he's very helpful. He helps with chores, he does what he can at home, and he plays with his sister.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. What do you think his strengths are at school? you're right, he does work well with friends, and he is a good listener. I do know that you and I discussed, you were concerned a little bit when we spoke on the phone last week. We kind of talked about it, and you and I communicate quite frequently, right? Do you mind if I read kind of the notes I took from our phone call? Would that be okay with you? So when I spoke to Mrs. Shaw, she had concerns about his reading and writing skills, and she felt he needed help in these areas. She also noticed that he has difficulty following instructions, and but you and your husband are super happy with his grades in math, and the comments that he makes about his friends at school. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go ahead and start to look and diagnose exactly what we want to focus on for Dan this year. And Mr. Baker, if at any time you want to jump in and just share your thoughts on that, that would be great. Moving forward, do you want to just share with Mrs. Shaw something that you see as one of Dan's strengths in your classroom?
You know, I think Dan does a really nice job connecting with his peers. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's not a class clown, but we really enjoy having him in class.
Perfect. So we know that with Dan's disability that sometimes that he has some difficulties within class. And we noted that in science and social studies, he is actually in your classroom during that time. We have integrated him back into the general ed. He does work very closely with Mr. Baker, and you know, he's been experiencing some great success due to the modifications that Mr. Baker has made. And we had talked, you provide assignment notebooks, reading of tests, and a peer tutor for written assignments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we are making modifications within the classroom. We feel that it is more beneficial for Dan to be in the classroom during those times with those supports put in place so that he can find success with his peers, because that's one of his strengths, is being around other kids that push him to want to do better. So we did come up with a new goal for him, and it is given grade level assignments, Dan will complete work with an 80% accuracy on 4 to 5 assignments by next year on this date. So we are asking that he get at least an 80% out of 4 to 5 assignments that he does within the math and science and social studies. Does that sound like an achievable goal, do you think?
Yes.
Perfect, and I think he's going to do a fantastic job there. So we also want to look at reading, because we know that Dan does struggle a little bit with reading. He's unable to use decoding strategies on one-syllable or multi-syllable words. So we really want to help Dan understand and break apart those words for deeper meaning. So we are going to set a goal that is given a reading passage. Dan will accurately retell 4 out of 5 details with 80% accuracy, because part of that decoding is really affecting his comprehension abilities, and we would really like him to be able to retell details from the story, because that not only helps with details, but also with just his overall ability to comprehend and understand reading. Okay, do you have anything to add to that, Mr. Baker?
I think that sums it up pretty well.
Okay, we do also notice that with these decoding problems that sometimes oral reading can also be an issue. You know, his reading, he's such a hard-working kid and he tries so hard, but sometimes when he's reading with his slower rate, it seems almost labored and hard, and you can see that it's stressing him. You know, he can identify most letters and letter combinations correctly, but only in isolation. He's not really fully able to really put them all together. So that's something we're really working on. Now, you know, he does have a strength within all of this. And Mr. Baker, do you want to share what you see as a strength with his reading ability there?
You know, Dan's ability to complete his grade level reading and his writing activities is lower than where we'd like them to be. However, he does them independently, and he tries really hard, and he's always got a great attitude, and he wants to understand more. He pays attention when you're reading to him, and he listens very well. So I think overall that the goals that we're going to set aside for him are very achievable.
Perfect. So currently, Dan, we just tested him. We did an assessment the other day just to see how many minutes he was reading per minute, and he read 110 words per minute with 8 to 10 errors at his independent reading level, which is at a second grade reading level. So he is making gains, but we're really still trying to work on that. So we've set a goal for him this year, an objective, which is given a reading passage, Dan will end this year reading at 175 words per minute with an 80% accuracy level by next year on November 15th, 2019. So this exactly 1 year from now. So does that sound okay? And you know, we've put in a lot of supports. He's having many opportunities to read with his peers in his classroom. Mr. Baker has been working with different programming to help Dan. He's using the modifications on his homework, but he's also allowed to get on Moby Max, which really helps him with reading comprehension. We also have put in place some read mastery for him in that area, and I really am seeing some great improvements, and I know Mr. Baker and I are very pleased with his progress. So I know another concern that you talked to me about was Dan kind of having difficulty following directions and also his writing, and I think that, you know, we've kind of coupled this goal together, his following directions and his writing. So we've decided that a good goal for Dan this year is given a 3-step direction from an adult. Dan will complete all steps with 1 additional prompt in 4 to 5 trials as measured by his teacher. So he will be able to complete these steps, and we're hoping that he only has to be redirected 1 time, 4 out of 5 opportunities, because that's really something that is important for Dan. And I think sometimes Dan is just this amazing kid, and his brain gets moving so fast that he forgets the steps that he's working towards. So, you know, one of Dan's strengths that I notice that I see when I get to work with him is, you know, when directions are given, he can pick up clues from his peers around him and kind of jump back into place. So he is very aware of his situation, and I really think that his peers really drive him to be better. And I think that's why it's so important that he stays in the general classroom, and that we just build up a lot of supports and a lot of modifications, or, you know, whatever we need to just to really support and come around him. Would that be correct, Mr. Baker?
I completely agree.
You know, and Dan is really good about following like 1 and 2 step directions. We just need to get him moving in the right direction. So sometimes we need to make time for him, and you know, one of his needs, I think, in this case is it's hard for him to follow classroom activities because things get so busy. So we need to be able to give him more time to work on his assignments. I think that's something that we really need to focus on. You know, his written work does contain spelling errors. Have you noticed those spelling errors?
There are spelling errors. There's some punctuation issues, and really his sentences are a little bit short from what we are looking for. But overall, he's really working in the right direction.
And you know, one thing I've noticed is he really wants to be clever in his sentences. You know, he's got this awesome personality, and that's really starting to show. So the goal that we've set for this, his writing, is on grade level assignments. So we are talking on 4th grade level assignments. Dan will complete sentences with 7 or more words with correct punctuation with an 80% accuracy by next year at this time. So we really do want to push him forward, because I really think Dan is capable of so much. So this is the goals that we've put in place for him this year. Do you have any questions or concerns?
I'm honestly just concerned about his reading and writing skills, and